Okay, thank you, Grace. Well, welcome to this meeting. I think this is one of League's meetings that everyone looks forward to because we really get an opportunity to kind of move around the community thanks to the work of our observers and hear what's going on with various governmental bodies. And this, again, I think it may seem like an individual report to those who are giving it, but I think it really gives all of us and hopefully our viewers an opportunity to see in broader terms what is going on among our governing bodies. So this is the first of two of these kinds of meetings. We'll have the other one in April. That will be an evening meeting at 7 o'clock right here at Clark Lindsay.
April 20th.
April 20th, thank you. But before we get into those reports, I do want to advise you that we are very quickly moving in on the deadline for the petition drive for redistricting. Petitions are still available at the Chamber of Commerce office, 303 West Kirby in Champaign. I happen to have a generous supply of petitions, and even though we're within the last 3 weeks of this drive, it is still possible to get 10, 15, 20, 25 signatures. And I think every one of those signatures is going to help us not only maintain the minimum number of signatures that we need for this effort, but also to build up some kind of a cushion, because certainly we know that there will be challenges, that there will be some accidentally missigned, if I can use that word, that will not pass muster, and then we can certainly fall back on the reserve that we have. But I think the excitement over this has been great. I'm just overwhelmed by the fact that unlike other petition drives, we've really had to do very little selling because people seem to know about this, they are aware of it, and agree on two levels. One, that first of all, the voters of Illinois should make the decision about how we move forward in terms of redistricting efforts after the census. And secondly, that on its own merit, this is a good thing to do. So thank you for those of you who have already signed. Thanks to those who have carried petitions. I'm sure the State League is so grateful for your efforts, and I think we have a lot of energy and enthusiasm to carry into obtaining the final number and also moving into the fall when the real work of promoting this effort needs to take place. Okay, I do have a petition here. If you have not signed and are wanting to sign, I did bring some blanks with me if you want to take one or two. So, please take advantage of the time that is remaining. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Betty Siegel, who is the chair of our Observer Corps, and she will introduce the observers who are reporting today. Betty?
Thank you. Okay. We have today 6 observers are going to be reporting. We go the Urbana School District, District 116, the Champaign City Council, the Champaign Plan Commission, the Champaign County Board, the Champaign Regional Planning Commission, and then our last observer is going to be talking about an interesting study that she's been doing looking at township boards, which we haven't looked at before, and she's going to have some interesting observations to make about what she has found in looking at those boards. I would like to say that the Observer Corps is often the face of the League for many of the boards and commissions that we observe. They do not see us otherwise except in the paper when they're running for office in a forum, but it's an important position that are except for times like this, are sort of invisible, but every month, sometimes every week, people are going out and noticing what our elected and appointed officials are doing. It makes the boards be aware that the public is concerned. It's good when we can be there. It's good when we can wear our buttons to let people know we're from the League. And actually, we learn a lot for ourselves. I'm on one of the boards in the county, and observing one of the other boards, I learned so much about what a good board does and how a good board operates. So there's benefits both ways. So now we would hear from Grace Schertl with the Urbana School District 116. She has 10 minutes. I'm sorry, what? Oh, and unfortunately, I made a little note and said she needed a replacement. She said she does not need a replacement. I misunderstood a conversation we had earlier. She is going to continue with us, and I'm very happy to hear that.
Yeah, the comment I made to Betty was that I can attend the school board meetings on Tuesday night, or I can attend the League meetings, but I can't do both. So with that, anyway. The Urbana School Board meets on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except July, at 7:30 p.m. The board makeup is the same as last year. At the spring election, Ruth Ann Fisher was the only board member to have a challenger, but Ms. Fisher easily won re-election. The board has been able to carry out discussions on many issues. Lately, even Member Fisher is willing to state her position on issues. This willingness to openly discuss issues is a fairly recent development. When I first observed this board back in 1993, it seemed that the board members would often cast votes without ever having an open discussion on the issues. Public attendance and citizen statements vary from none at all to an overflowing room, depending on the agenda, as when the boundaries for Leal School were threatened to be changed. The dual language programs offered at Leal and Prairie School have been very popular. There are 191 kindergarten through second grade students currently in the program. The district has an agreement with the Illinois State Board of Education for its international exchange program that allows the district to hire teachers from Spain. The program director, Joe Wiemelt, has traveled to Spain to interview candidates who will come on 3-year visas. This year, though, the interviews will be via Skype. There are currently 2 such teachers in the Urbana program. The Spanish Ministry of Education, Culture, and Sport pays for the travel expenses of the recruitment trips. 35 other states and Canada participate in this exchange program with Spain. This year, the dual language program has had more applicants than usual from the U.S. and may not actually bring any new teachers from Spain. The Spanish dual language program in Urbana has been so popular that the district is considering adding another dual language program in Mandarin Chinese. The Urbana schools said farewell to former Superintendent Preston Williams in June. The new superintendent, Don Owen, has hit the ground running, so to speak. Because Dr. Owen was an internal hire, he has had no difficulty getting used to the new position. I think the board made an excellent choice in Dr. Owen. He is on top of all the issues, is well-spoken, and seems to care about the well-being of each student. I have been impressed with Dr. Owen's ability to sum up the board discussion and articulate what action the board wants the administration to take. Urbana High School also welcomed a new principal, Matthew Stark. He has made a positive start with the students and faculty alike. One of his tasks will be to help the school board find a site for its graduation ceremonies. Previously, the district rented the Assembly Hall, now the State Farm Center. However, the hall is in renovation for the next 3 years and unavailable. The board has looked at other sites and seems to have come to the conclusion that the ceremonies will be held on a Saturday morning at the new Urbana High School athletic complex, if a suitable protective covering for the artificial turf can be purchased or rented at a reasonable price. The middle school gym will serve as an indoor site in case of rain, though this would limit the number of guests each student could invite. The district's budget woes became even worse, as probably you all have heard, because of the loss of funding from Carle Foundation with the new tax exemption. The Urbana School District's loss is more than $3 million, which is about 5% of the district's annual budget. The new state legislation hits Urbana especially hard because Urbana is also the home of Presence Hospital and the University of Illinois, all tax-exempt institutions. The announcement of this tax exemption for hospitals came after the district had set its budget and levy for the 2013 budget year. For the past 8 years, the district has kept in escrow the tax payments made by Carle Foundation, totaling about $10 million. This, of course, made the district's financial picture look better than it actually was, because state aid is determined by the amount of money in the district's bottom line. Carol Baker, the district business director, estimated that the district lost out on about $8 million in general state aid during this time. Last fall, the district entered into an agreement with Carle Foundation to return a portion of the taxes which had been kept in escrow. The school district will pay Carle about 52.5% of the money in 6 installments, ending in July 2018. The district set its tax levy in December at the full amount of property tax money allowed. So the Urbana taxpayers will be trying to make up the loss of the Carle Foundation taxes. The levy was for about $31.5 million, while last year's levy was about $29.1 million. So despite the fact that the board voted to abate $1 million in taxes for the Urbana taxpayers, taxes will still be rising this year. The district expects that property taxes will go down after 2018, when the bonds for the middle school and Leal renovations and the indoor pool will be paid off. The new Urbana Early Childhood School opened in August. The school serves about 360 children, half in the morning and half in the afternoon. The building cost the taxpayers nearly $12 million, funded in part by the school facilities sales tax, which the voters of Champaign County approved a few years ago. At the March 4th study session, Principal Chris Vowles asked the board to consider allowing a limited pre-K tuition-based option at the school. She said that with the ever-dwindling state support of early childhood education, she will need to reduce staff within 2 years without additional revenues. By allowing one paid student in each session, more than $61,000 could be raised, enough to retain a full-time teacher. There was much discussion within the board. Some of the fears include making competition for local commercial daycare centers, and that the fees proposed, $285 per month per student, would not totally cover the costs to the district. A straw poll was taken, with 5 of the board in favor of waiting for more information and 1 in favor of going ahead with the tuition-based option immediately. Interestingly, this discussion went on for more than an hour, but received only 1 sentence in the News Gazette article the following day. Overall, the enrollment is up in the district. Last spring, the board discussed ways to control overcrowding at Leal School. It was decided that rather than drastically change the boundaries, a cap on enrollment could be made and a slight redrawing of the boundaries. By the time school opened, Leal did not have to turn anyone away after all. Prairie School, however, had to add an extra kindergarten class to accommodate the high enrollment. One of the Urbana School Board's responsibilities is to operate the adult education program. In the last 10 years, adult ed has been cut by 50%. According to the new director, Sam Bindum, funding is down, but demand is up. There are currently between 600 and 700 students enrolled in the program. One of the popular programs at Urbana Adult Education is the Certified Nursing Assistant course, which partners with Carl and other groups in the area. Director Bindum has been creatively seeking grants from many different sources. This week, he accepted a $5,000 grant from Joan Dixon, President and CEO of the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois. Board President Dimmitt suggested a consortium with other school districts for funding the program, but I'm not sure if this has been done.
Grace, time to wrap up.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. And now Holly Wilper will present her observations on the Champaign City Council, and you have 10 minutes.
All right.
Thank you.
And I hope whoever left their phone up here knows they left it.
It's me.
Hold it up very close to your mouth.
Okay. Whenever I get my information together to make this report, I always am sort of tasked with trying to figure out what out of the massive number of things we're done in the year I'm going to put into this report. So what I've tried to do is pick out a couple of major themes, and I'll touch on those and then 2 or 3 other little bits after that. Unfortunately, since you're going to hear from the planning and development people later today, you're going to hear about some of this stuff twice. But anyway, the Champaign City Council, with the mayor serving as first among equals, is the primary governing body of the city of Champaign. Current members are Mayor Gerard, Deborah Finan, Karen Foster, William Kiles, Michael Ledoux, Tom Bruno, Marcy Dodds, Paul Ferrasci, and Vic McIntosh. The council meets every Tuesday evening from 7 p.m. till the agenda is complete, which sometimes is as early as 7:20 and sometimes is as late as 11 p.m. The council has regular voting sessions and also special study sessions, sometimes on separate evenings and sometimes together. Information about the council proceedings is very available to the public. The agendas are available prior to meetings. Minutes of all meetings, including study sessions, are available online. All formal meetings are recorded and rebroadcast on the local public access channel, as well as being available for download through the city website. This year has added the publication on the website, as well as available on order via email or U.S. mail, copies of all reports to council that are part of study sessions. So that can be very useful if you can go in and see what the council was actually looking at during the discussion. Now you all laugh. The Champaign City Council also serves as the board for the city of Champaign Township. Last year in June, the township got a new supervisor in Andrew Kornstrom, who's been working on expanding transparency and public view into the workings of the township. The township is now active on Twitter and Facebook and working on improving its website. Mr. Kornstrom has indicated that he has an open office policy and encourages direct contact with him and with his office. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about some watershed improvements that have happened in the city. The City of Champaign's done a lot of work over the last decade on preventing flooding in various areas of the community. Flooding is an issue both for quality of life, but it's also a fiscal issue because flooding destroys the infrastructure and then it has to be rebuilt using tax money. The work to date on drainage improvements around the town has led to FEMA developing a new floodplain map, which has removed large sections of the town from being considered flood threats. This changes how construction can be done in several parts of town, including large sections of campus town, and also allows many building owners to save money by not having to get more expensive flood insurance. There are still more steps in the Boneyard project in particular before the rest of the area will not be considered a floodplain. When planning new sections of town, the city tries to take flooding risks into consideration, and this has prevented the problem from emerging in newer sections of town. But there are still large existing issues. In particular, there are lots of problems on what they call the West Washington neighborhood, which is sort of in the northern and more western section of Champaign. They've been working with the neighborhood association to get a plan to improve the drainage. The priority is to offset the worst flooding first, since that will also help them save the most money. The current plan calls for sort of a park-like basin, like the one that was done on the Boneyard near First and Springfield. One of those will be put in near Prospect by Washington and Russell. And after that, another one will be put in near Glen Park Drive. And in the final phase, they'll need to do some sewer work near Edwin and James. In total, in the next 4 years, Champaign is currently looking at spending a total of about $7.8 million on various stormwater management projects, including phase 2, 4, and 5 of the Boneyard Creek projects, the 3 phases of the West Washington plan, and also a major study for the Garden Hills watershed drainage area. In development, this year the council made progress on their Bristol Park redevelopment plan. They've applied for a federal Section 108 loan to cover the portions of the project that cannot be found in the Urban Renewal and Homes funds. Land acquisition has started. They're starting with the properties that they have clear title and where there's currently no relocation funds in order to move the people out that are currently there. The city is currently offering the higher of the appraised value and what its tax assessment is. The council has completed the University District Traffic Circulation Study. This was a study of traffic patterns from 2006 to 2011 that was intended to help the council reach a balance between and promote safety for various modes of transit: pedestrians, bicycle, vehicle, mass transit, and then also emergency vehicles. Some of the points I found the most interesting in the report out on this is that there's been a reduction in traffic on pretty much all of the main corridors over this time period, but 85% of the traffic on that corridors is going more than 10 miles per hour over the speed limit. The congestion at rush hour from the people coming in and out of the University District has expanded out to the periphery all the way out to Windsor, First, Lincoln, and University. There have been fewer traffic accidents overall, but the Green Street corridor in particular has the highest number of pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicle accidents of anywhere in the city. In April, the council contracted with JSM Development to build a hotel and other facilities on the current parking lot at 6th and Green in Campus Town. The plan was to bring a 108-room extended stay hotel under the Town Place Suites by Marriott brand to that site. The construction was supposed to start in fall of 2013. I'm sure you've seen all the construction going on out there. To be completed by August 2015. And this contract includes some sharing of the costs of keeping public parking, about 131 spaces there. Unfortunately, the subcontracting proposals did not come in where it was expected, and there's continuing discussion about some changes to that proposal. Also this year, demolition finally began on the Gateway Hotel, which was at the intersection at 74. The hotel had been standing vacant for several years. It had become a haven for crime and unsafe because vandals had actually removed so many things to sell that there were problems with structural integrity in the buildings. And the video of that is particularly enjoyable. There's any number of pieces of things that are clearly hugely unsafe there. So it had become not only a burden on the police, but it also become a danger to firefighters. So that was finally begun. And now a few bits and pieces. In September, there was a new youth assessment center opened. This facility provides coordination of community services for at-risk youth. In particular, it manages what are called station adjustments, which are diversions from the court process, an opportunity to get services, pay restitution, complete public service work, and conduct peer review instead of becoming part of the court system for juvenile offenders. The Safe Walk to Schools program for Stratton Elementary School received a grant and is moving forward. Southside already had a Safe Routes to School program. However, there was an accident this year where a child was injured, fortunately not severely. So the council has passed a couple of additional proposals to increase the safety for students on Prospect Avenue. The council voted to extend the mobile food truck pilot program. The project's been going since June of 2012 and has been a success. There have been a few issues discovered and some changes are being made to address them. In particular, the food trucks requested to be able to stay in a given location for 4 hours instead of just 2. And also the city realized that some of the food trucks had very loud generators on them that were causing a noise issue. So they've made some changes to the way the program is being instituted that sort of allows more to the food truck users, but also takes care of the generator problem. They're looking at expanding the program into new locations, including possibly having some locations near the local high schools. We have open campuses, so the high school kids frequently leave to get lunch. The council has made what I personally find to be some much needed changes to the honorary street name program, including that each honorary designation will be reviewed after 10 years, and that they will review a maximum of 4 of these per year in one council meeting. It seemed like over the last few years we were getting more and more honorary streets, and with very large signs on them. My husband sometimes has a hard time finding his way around town. And finally, chickens. For those of you who think that the wheels of government always turn very slowly, the first meeting at which somebody said, hey, we should talk about having urban chickens was April 2nd of last year. At the July 9th meeting, staff presented information about urban hens and were advised to make a plan. They brought the plan up on November the 12th, and on December the 3rd, the new ordinance was passed allowing for keeping hens in the urban environment. So basically, over the course of 8 months, they went from not thinking about chickens to having some rules on the books about chickens. And that's what I have for this year.
Thank you, Holly. And now, Trish Crawley is going to tell us about the activities of the Champaign Plan Commission.
I'm going to be my own timer. That's always a danger. Huh?
We've got a hook.
Okay. I know you guys. So I'm going to start a little bit by talking about the role of plan commissions in Illinois and the kind of decisions they make. And to my mind, the Plan Commission is one of the most interesting and important citizen functions in municipal government. And this is interesting because they don't make any final decisions. They make advisory decisions. They make a decision that on an issue that's forwarded to the city council, and the city council makes a final decision on all of them. So what kinds of issues do they talk about? Basically, they're very important in determining the land use, the ways land is used in a municipality. We're talking about annexation, plats, and zoning, and comprehensive plans. This year, for instance, there was an update of the comprehensive plan for the city of Champaign that talked about walkability. They added a section on how to make cities more walkable. Last year, I think they worked on how to make the city more usable to bike users. So these are the kinds of broad issues that the Plan Commission discusses. The staff brings up a proposed plan, and the Plan Commission then discusses it in a public forum. And I think one of the reasons that Plan Commissions are so important is it is really the best public forum for discussions about land use in the city. After a decision goes from the Plan Commission to the council, sometimes it's too late to have a real good public input. But at the Plan Commission stage, where the citizens get to make their opinions known, is a really good time for input, because it gives all sides time to reconsider the decision and make improvements as necessary. And I have a couple of examples of this that I think show how it works in practice. A few months ago, the question of rezoning the University Avenue between Wright Street and Fifth Street on the north side came before the Plan Commission. And the project proposed was to basically build a 500-unit student apartment in covering a 2-block area. And obviously, this would be a big change in that area of town, which the 2 blocks there right now, there was a car wash, a used car dealer. They were low-use kinds of activities. And you insert, 500 student apartments, and all of a sudden you have a very intense use that might have impact on the neighborhood. And the neighborhood there, basically, many of the neighbors came out to complain that this is not the direction they wanted to go in. And as a result of the discussion, the topic was tabled, and the case was adjourned without a recommendation to go into the city council. And in my experience, what this normally means is that the developer is in the process of discussing with the neighborhood leaders things that they can do to change the project that would make it more acceptable. In other words, this is a stage in a land use project in which changes can be made, and concessions, changes, modifications can be made that will address the basic issues that the opponents, for instance, of a project are presenting. And in a lot of situations, there are times, when the train has already left the station by the time the public gets to be informed of an issue. And so it's important that people take advantage of this opportunity to give early input at a time when, in fact, it can be really effective. Another example of this opportunity for public input was the recent discussion of whether the zoning ordinance should be amended to allow soup kitchens in a broader area. And this brought out a lot of opponents and proponents for the issue. Opponents, basically the North End Avenue, seeing this as, the North End area, seeing this as where soup kitchens are likely to be moving to, proponents who want basically to have a wider variety of choice and being able to site their facilities. And so this created a very vigorous discussion in front of the Planning Commission and then eventually in front of the City Council. And so our Planning Commission has very knowledgeable citizens, include real estate lawyers and university professors, who both in the law school and the Urban Studies Institute. So it's very well served. The city is very well served by its Planning Commission as a place where very important decisions regarding land use are actively discussed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trish. Yes, that was worth applause. So we've heard from the local level at the Urbana City, from something from the Champaign City. Now we're going to the larger region and hear about the Champaign County Board, which affects everybody in the county. Margaret Olson is going to tell us about that.
Thank you. I think my board has probably been in the news more recently than your board. It's on the front page of the local section of the newspaper, for one thing. The county board meets in one general meeting of the month, the third week of the month. Up until January, they met at 7 o'clock. They're now meeting at 6:30. They also meet in 3 different committee meetings during the first week of the month of standing committees, and each board member belongs to one of those committees. And then the second week of the month, they meet in a committee of the whole, which takes 3 of the committees they used to have, and all members are a member of the committee of the whole and vote on those 3 committees. The County Administrator Deb Busey attends almost all meetings, and heads of departments and elected officials attend as they're needed. An employee of the county clerk takes minutes, and you can always find out what's going on. The meetings are live on Cable Channel 2 and on ATT Universe, and it's replayed later on Champaign and Urbana public cable stations, and it's streamed live on the county clerk's website, and it's posted on YouTube. And you can go back and find it anytime you want to. And if I can't make a meeting, if it snows or something, I can watch TV. The Champaign County website has a lot of information about the county board and its committees and the resolutions and other things they do. And the county clerk's website also has a great amount of, they have the agendas, and they have the YouTube video and a lot of other things. So you can always find out what's going on. Non-controversial agenda items agreed to by members at these committee meetings and the Committee of the Whole, which I will from now on refer to the COW, because that's what they call it. It's the Committee of the Whole, the COW. These are placed on a consent agenda, which is voted on near the beginning of every full county board meeting, and without another vote, because they've been agreed to by all the members at the meetings. Closed executive sessions are usually at the end of a full board meeting, but not always. And they're for the normal personnel negotiations, litigation, and property reasons. Members sit together by district. There's 2 members in each of the 11 districts. But they don't always sit in the same chairs. They alternate Republican and Democrat, and each meeting, it's a different order of people, so they get to know each other, not just the people in the district next to them. And furthermore, they now sit so that they can see each other, and the audience can see them, and everybody can see, and it's wonderful. A big difference than the way it was 2 years ago when they remodeled that boardroom. The board membership, as I said, is 22 members from 11 districts, which changed in 2012 after a vote we had. And there are 11 districts. Districts 1 to 5 are mostly rural, and each one is represented by 2 Republicans. And districts 6 through 11 are mostly urban, and they have 2 Democrats in each one of those, and that probably won't change next year. Redistricting may make a difference on how the districts are drawn, so we'll see how it is, but who the people are changes. Member Alan Kurtz is the chair, and we will be until December. He's salaried. He was elected in 2012, and at that board meeting when the redistricting changed, every board member ran for election, and they drew lots for who got 2-year term and 2 4-year terms, or 4-2-4, or you have to, in 10 years, you get 2 4-year terms and a 2-year term. Kurtz drew a 2-4-4-1, which meant that 2 years after being elected, he was running again, and so he ran this year. He was challenged in his primary by a former board chairman, his predecessor, Pius Weibel, and Pius had chosen not to run 2 years ago. Kurtz's defeat by Weibel this Tuesday assured that there will be a new board chair in December. This isn't the first time this has happened that 2 Democrats have been elected in spite of the fact their caucuses were not in favor of them. But anyway, in other interesting elections, Ralph Langenheim, who's been on the board for quite some time, and it was one of the 2 Democrats who went along with the Republicans and elected Kurtz as chair. He lost in a fairly close election to newcomer Shana Jo Harrison, and the third one of those Democrats who voted with the Republicans did not have a 2-4-4. She wasn't running this year, so she probably, if she had drawn a 2-year term, she probably would have been defeated too. Because I think maybe the Democrats, the established Democrats, don't you think maybe ran opponents against these people who they've been sitting around for 2 years stewing about it or something. In another interesting contest, Patsy Petrie in District 6 defeated Tony Fabry, who had been on the county board in the past and who most recently was county auditor and who had lost an election 2 years ago and who had been accused of not coming to work. I think that was one of the. And lastly, Lorraine Coward, who is the longest serving member of the county board, had no problems defeating a challenger in her district. Without some sort of slating, which I'm not sure is allowed, Districts 2 through 5 will remain Republican, and Districts 8 through 11 will remain Democrat. And there are going to be contests between the two parties only in Districts 1, 6, and 7. We will get 3 new board members, though. The rules that allowed this election of Mr. Kurtz 2 years ago were very peculiar, and I won't go into them. I talked about them last year. But there's been confusion, and I'm sure there's been talk in Democratic establishment circles ever since about it. And it turns out there must have been talk on the whole board about the rules, because the rules that allowed it were so odd. On February 25th, there was a study session for the board, which I watched online on my computer. And it was very interesting to watch the members discuss what changes they might be interested in making. Now, they talked about getting this to the board meeting, which is tonight for this month, but it's not on the agenda, so it'll probably come up next month. But I think we're going to get some changes because of this. I was interested. There seemed to be no partisanship, and it was very civil and very well educated. The people that were talking among each other had good arguments, and it was interesting to watch a 2-hour meeting of them talking about rules. One of the things they talked about was electronic participation in meetings. It apparently is allowed by the Open Meetings Act, and some organizations do this. But there are things you've got to consider, like, are you allowed to vote at one of these? You are allowed to participate. You are not allowed by statute, I guess, to be part of the quorum. But there are certain rules, but they're looking into whether they might have electronic participation. That'd be phone or, I guess, computer or some other way. Skype. I don't know if Skype would work. They also were talking about this rule on how you elect the chair, and details like, do you let different people vote first each time, or just how do you do this? And whether the way they did it before, they only did one candidate at a time. They nominated one person and voted on that one. Now the question is, do you nominate all the people you might want to see and then choose among them? That's one of the changes. Just keep watching. We are likely to see changes in the board rules that are going to affect other things they discuss at meetings. Jails and the incarceration system have been the big topic of discussion all year long. A year ago, I reported on the fact they had a committee they were going to start discussing and they've had a lot of public participation. They appointed a Institute for Law and Public Policy Planning to provide consulting services for the county jail assessment. This discussion started with talk about the facilities and the fact that downtown jail was a horror, and whether we should have only one jail and what to do about whether we had to add a pod at Brookins or a pod at the jailer. There were assorted discussions, but there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of community involvement. And the group they chose, and Dr. Kalmanoff, who came 3 or 4 times here, and who was very open to discussions with all works, including our own league jail committee. And he made some interesting changes, proposals, which some of the state's attorney and the sheriff have done, and there are others I'm sure they won't do. And just wait and see, though, because they never did make any decision on what they're going to do about the jails. So that's sure to come up anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's my copies.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to hear about a larger area, the Champaign Regional Planning Commission from Nancy Morse. So we've heard about the Champaign City Plan Commission. Now we hear the Champaign Regional Planning Commission. You'll have 5 minutes.
Although the board, I observe, is called the Regional Plan Commission, actual planning is not the major function of this. It's a coordinating group. The members of the Regional Plan Commission are representatives of the county. It used to be Urbana and Champaign, and it has expanded to include representatives from Mahomet, from Savoy, and from St. Joseph, and from Rantoul. So they're more interested in, they do planning, but not so much, it's more overall. And it's an incredibly interesting group. The chair, or the leader is Cameron Moore, who replaced John Dimmitt, who had had that position for a very long time. And by now Cam has been there 4 years or so and is quite comfortable, I think, with his role and how he's adapting it. The current members, which won't stay the same because of the news, Ed Bland is the community member. One of the changes they made this year was they changed the name to community member, and it had been low income and minority. And they were having trouble. Ed Bland would like to retire, and I think they were having trouble finding a replacement, and they wondered if they changed the name, if it would be more appealing. But he's still the community member. There are 2 representatives of the city of Champaign, Paul Ferracci and Deb Finan. Tammy Fruling-Vosges from St. Joe, Dick Helton, who's the village manager of Savoy, Alan Kurtz, who's the chair of the Champaign County Board, so it always has been the county board chairman who's sat on the Regional Plan Commission, so whoever that is. Patsy Petrie is a county board member. The other county board member is Jonathan Schroeder. Laurel Prussing is one of the 2 Urbana representatives. She's the mayor, and it was Robert Lewis, who retired from the city council and then retired from the board, and he was replaced with Charlie Smith. The Mel Smigelski, who's the village manager of Mahomet, is also on the board. And the member from Rantoul is Bruce Sandall, whose name has been in the paper, and when they have a new administrator, I suspect he will represent Rantoul. It's the mayor's choice in Champaign to have 2 council people instead of having the mayor also. The chair position changes each year in a certain rotation. Currently, Urbana and the mayor, Laurel Prussing, are serving as chair. And the sequence then is, next will be Champaign, Mahomet, the Champaign County Board Chair, and Savoy. And I don't know when St. Joe will get into that rotation, but I assume it will. The beginnings of their meetings are pretty pro forma. They approve the bills, they discuss what is coming up. The staff is very impressive. The staff has been constant. The administrator, Elizabeth Murphy, manages an incredibly complex budget. Their budget is over $20 million. A large part of that is Head Start. Most of the money comes from grants, federal and state. A small part comes from the fees they charge their members. The only, the main decision they made all year was to go to meetings every other month instead of every month. And the board members, when they come, seem to be very well prepared. There's an incredibly efficient secretary, which helps the thing move along. There really were no highlights. It was more, I shouldn't say that, they worked very hard, but it was more of the same. The Workforce Investment Board came under the sponsorship, or the umbrella of Regional Planning Commission about 1.5 years ago. And the transition from being independent to being part of RPC apparently went quite smoothly. Much of that was due to Al Anderson, who was their chair and has since retired. But that seems to be moving along. They discussed last summer during the drought a model water ordinance, and the local governments have received copies, but it will impact them, and so they are going to study it further. No decision. But it's an interesting board.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now Cheryl Kennedy is going to tell us about her interesting project that is ongoing. She became interested in her township board, and she's been observing, and she's doing 2 boards right now that she's comparing, and she'll tell you about that. It's been interesting because these were boards who didn't have public coming to their meetings. They didn't have a league member coming to their meetings. So she's been able to observe a kind of evolution in how they behave, I think, as a result of having someone come.
And that is definitely true. It's a work in progress for me. My first challenge was to learn about township government, and so what I brought is my example of my research. I, of course, copied off the township code and a report of the National Association of Towns and Townships, a report on local democracy in townships in Illinois, a survey done by the Illinois Institute of Rural Affairs, and then articles, pros and cons of township government. And then the foundation of what I'm doing comes from the county clerk's site, and looking at population and housing units and how these townships compare. Now, I had irregularly visited the Mahomet Township meeting over the years, and now I'm there almost every month. I attended Brown Township and Hensley Township because I wanted to compare and see if they did something different from Mahomet's, because in the beginning, I'm the only one that goes to the Mahomet meetings, and there were never any chairs out when I first started coming. And although there were plenty of chairs against the wall, so, they helped me pull a chair up for myself, and there were never any agendas. And now there are chairs set up now for at least a dozen people, and there are agendas out there for us. And in general, my question for myself was, what is their business, and when and where do they do it? Because, if nobody's coming, it's not their fault, really. I mean, they start doing their business other places. They are talking amongst themselves, and they all know what they do, and they're all very efficient. So I don't think that they're trying to do anything, under the table or outside of the public realm, but they just don't have any public coming. And so, you just do your business when you can do your business. Now, as of the 2010 census, Mahomet Township had a population of 12,623, and it contained 4,965 housing units. It covers a total area of 33.24 square miles, and they meet on the second Wednesday of the month at their office on Main Street in Mahomet. Due to the number of housing units and the assessed valuation, Mahomet has a lot more to work with than many of the other townships. And that would compare to Rantoul, Champaign, Urbana, actually not Urbana, because they all, Rantoul, Champaign, and Mahomet tend to have the same population and housing units. Township boundaries, however, in Mahomet just keep changing, because the village of Mahomet just keeps taking township land, and so it's crazy. I mean, you can't look at a map and say, this is the township because it kind of squiggles all over the place. Hensley Township has a population of 1,278 compared to Mahomet's 12,623, and 542 housing units as compared to Mahomet's 4,965. And that's why I decided, I think I'll go to Hensley and Mahomet to compare the two, because we've got 28 townships. And it was the first thing for me was, how do I embrace this? You know, what am I going to learn, and how should I go about this? And I've learned in the conversations that are going on amongst the trustees and the road commissioner and the supervisor, you know, there is intergovernmental cooperation. Sometimes it's competition, and for Mahomet, for example, they have a really aggressive road commissioner, and everybody you talk to in Mahomet says we have the best roads because of that in the township. And so there was some competition between the Village Mahomet and Mahomet Township for some of the roads that the state was contracting out to have local government take care of. Now at Hensley Township, they talked about their concern that Champaign School, the high school, was actually all the places they were looking at were in Hensley Township, and that would take land out of their budget, and so it would reduce the money that they had to work with, and that was a concern for them. And then they share a neighborhood in Champaign, and there was some road repair and work that needed to be done, and there was concern about that. So it's interesting what you hear about intergovernmental cooperation. The three main functions of the townships are general assistance, and that's to provide assistance to low-income families. It could be rent, it could be some assistance for some health care, some immediate assistance, those that don't qualify for some of the public aid. And then there is, of course, doing the assessments and road and bridge repair. So there is a certain amount of interaction for sure and meaty things that they attend to. Now, my experiences, and certainly mostly what I have been doing, is just being a public presence. I introduced myself to them as an observer for the League of Women Voters. They were everybody at the three townships that I visited, were all pleased that the League of Women Voters were taking an interest in their government. Of course, they're all very concerned about, the talk out there about eliminating townships, and so they want us to see what they actually do. I talked about what happened to Mahomet in relation to no chairs, and then I had chairs. On their agenda, I have a hard time sometimes figuring out, when do these things happen? There was always the Planning Commission. So I asked Mahomet one time, well, when does your Planning Commission meet? And I found out that they meet very irregularly as needed. And it is in reaction to the long-range management plan that the county, I've forgotten the acronym, but that was how their Planning Commission meant. But Hensley Township's Planning Commission comes to every meeting, and they meet prior to the meeting. Lo and behold, at the last meeting I attended, and I missed this last one, Mahomet now is going to have their Planning Commission meet prior to every meeting. So I thought, oh, that's cool. And then I was gone, their last meeting, so I didn't get to see it. Hensley does not pass out an agenda. But, am I done? Mahomet, but Mahomet does. Hensley reads their minutes, so you always know what happened in the meeting prior, but Mahomet doesn't. But Mahomet doesn't discuss a whole lot, so there really isn't a lot in their meeting minutes. And I have asked for them, and I've gotten them at the next meeting, but there's not a lot of content. So I'm still working on that. Mahomet Township reviews their bills before the meeting, and then they just sign off on them. Hensley reviews theirs during the meeting and sometimes talks about it. Mahomet rarely has a detailed activity report from the supervisor. Hensley Township supervisor usually does have some good detail to share, and the road commissioners in both cases always have good detailed information about what they've been doing, as does the assessor. Let's see. And then, of course, they both have general assistants. Muhammad doesn't have as many requests as Hensley Township does, and of course, those are all confidential, so you only know that they've had a request, but you don't know anything about them. I found this to be a very interesting project. I'm enjoying it a lot, and having worked for local government over 30 years, now serving as a trustee on the Muhammad Library, and then observing, thinking about it in the terms of the Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act, you know, it really gives you a whole different perspective. You can look at it from all different sides. And I recently attended a workshop for trustees on the sunshine laws, and I found that to be very helpful in the kinds of things that I'm trying to learn and maybe make a difference with. But I think that I definitely feel welcome at the township meetings, so that's not an issue. But I think that it's a new thing for them. And so I wish more people would come. I think Barb Wasaki's editorial that she did about transparency, and it takes both sides, is exactly right on. And I'm finding that so few people know anything about townships. And you know, there's been a big change from when they were farming areas, and you know, you talked a lot in the coffee shops, and now there are a lot of subdivisions, and the people who live in those subdivisions probably don't even know they live in a township. They probably think they live in the village. And so I think that there's a lot of education out there to be done. But I'm enjoying this very much.
Thank you, Cheryl. Well, that's all of the reports for this month. Next month, we're meeting on Tuesday evening here on the 15th. That's tax day, so get your taxes done before then if you haven't already, so you can get your refund before then and come to the meeting.
When is our April meeting?
The 15th of April.
Wait a minute.
Today's the 20th.
Today's the 20th, so it must be.
We're meeting on April 15th, which is Passover. Some people can't come. So anyway, that's what I have to say. I would like all of you to think, if you have an evening a month, an afternoon a month, an hour here and there, that you might take on a board to observe, maybe one that we aren't observing already. Come up with a project like Cheryl came up with. It adds an interest to what we hear, learning about our community. And we really need more people to take part in the Observer Corps. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mary, for passing this little position on to me and letting me have fun getting to know some of the observers.